when the stranger with the foreign accent started asking detailed questions about the military convoy routes and asking to buy detailed local maps. Most business owners in Millfield would have just made the sale. Robert Bob Carter, who owned the gas station where the man stopped for fuel, did something different. He started a counter-surveillance operation that would uncover the largest espionage ring to operate in rural America in over 20 years. Welcome to Those Who Left a Trace, where ordinary people carry the most extraordinary secrets. Before we dive into this incredible story that will leave you speechless, tell us in the comments what city you're watching from today. And if you believe that everyone deserves respect no matter how they appear on the surface, hit that subscribe button. Bob had been running Carter's Gas and Go for 15 years, ever since he'd moved to Millfield, Wisconsin, population 3,200. To everyone in town, he was just another small business owner trying to make ends meet in a dying agricultural community. He pumped gas, sold coffee and snacks, and occasionally helped stranded motorists with car trouble. His customers saw a middle-aged man with graying hair and callous hands who always had time for small talk about the weather or local high school football. What they didn't see was the way Bob's eyes tracked every vehicle that entered his lot, noting license plates, occupants, and patterns of behavior. They didn't notice how he positioned himself to maintain sight lines to both the highway and the back roads that led to the military installation 20 miles north. They had no idea that the man who counted their change had spent 18 years counting something far more significant: threats to American national security. Bob's previous life had been classified at the highest levels of government clearance. For nearly 2 decades, he had served as a counterintelligence specialist with the Central Intelligence Agency, specializing in identifying and neutralizing foreign intelligence operations on American soil. His career had taken him from the shadowy world of Cold War Berlin to the complex web of modern international espionage networks operating throughout the United States. The transition from CIA operative to small-town gas station owner hadn't been voluntary. In 2008, Bob had been working a deep cover assignment tracking a Russian intelligence cell operating in the Pacific Northwest. The operation had gone sideways when his cover was blown by a double agent within the FBI. 3 of his fellow operatives had been killed, and Bob himself had barely escaped with his life after a car bomb destroyed his apartment in Seattle. The agency had given him 2 choices: immediate extraction to a safe house overseas, or complete identity scrub and relocation within the continental United States. Bob had chosen the latter, unable to stomach the idea of spending the rest of his life looking over his shoulder in some foreign country. The CIA had created an entirely new identity for him, complete with 15 years of fabricated employment history, credit records, and personal background that would withstand all but the most sophisticated scrutiny. Millfield had been selected specifically because of its isolation and the low probability of foreign intelligence activity. The nearest major population center was Milwaukee, over 200 miles away. The town's primary claim to significance was its proximity to Fort McCready, a military installation that specialized in logistics and transportation rather than sensitive weapons research or strategic operations. It should have been the perfect place for a retired spy to disappear into anonymity. But Bob had discovered that old habits were impossible to break. Even in retirement, his training compelled him to observe, analyze, and assess potential threats. What had started as professional paranoia gradually evolved into something more systematic. Using his gas station as a base of operations, Bob began building an informal intelligence network that monitored unusual activity throughout the region. The gas station's location made it perfect for surveillance work. Positioned at the intersection of Highway 52 and County Road 18, Carter's Gas and Go was a natural stopping point for anyone traveling through the area. The station's elevated position provided excellent sight lines in all directions, and a constant flow of customers provided perfect cover for observation activities. Over the years, Bob had carefully cultivated relationships with local residents who could serve as additional eyes and ears throughout the community. Martha Henderson, who worked at the post office, kept him informed about unusual mail patterns or packages sent to unfamiliar addresses. Danny Kowalski, who drove a tow truck, reported on vehicles with out-of-state plates that had been abandoned or required unusual assistance. Janet Morrison, who managed the town's only motel, provided information about guests who paid in cash or exhibited suspicious behavior. None of these informal assets knew. They were part of an intelligence network. Bob had simply positioned himself as a concerned business owner who wanted to keep the community safe from crime and maintain awareness of anything unusual happening in the area. His request for information seemed like normal neighborly vigilance rather than professional surveillance operations. Bob had also used his technical expertise to enhance the gas station's capability for monitoring communications and electronic activity. Hidden among the normal business equipment were sophisticated radio scanners, digital recording devices, and internet monitoring systems that could intercept and analyze electronic communications throughout the region. The station's legitimate need for security cameras provided cover for a much more extensive surveillance system that monitored not just the gas station property, but the surrounding highway system and key approach routes to Fort McCready. The enhancement project had been gradual and careful, implemented over several years to avoid drawing attention from either local authorities or federal agencies that might be monitoring for unusual technical activity. Bob had used the savings from a CIA career to purchase equipment through shell companies and legitimate business fronts, ensuring that nothing could be traced back to his true identity or background. For 14 years, this informal surveillance network had operated without detecting any significant threats. Bob had occasionally identified and reported minor criminal activity to local law enforcement, careful to present information as observations from his position at the gas station rather than products of systematic intelligence gathering. The most significant incident had been a methamphetamine distribution ring that Bob had identified through patterns of suspicious vehicle activity and unusual customer behavior. His anonymous tip to the Wisconsin State Police had resulted in several arrests and the shutdown of a drug operation that had been affecting multiple counties. But on October 15th, everything changed. The man who pulled up to pump 3 at Carter's Gas and Go appeared unremarkable at first glance. Medium height, dark hair, wearing jeans and a plaid flannel shirt that suggested he was trying to blend in with local fashion. His vehicle was a late-model Ford pickup truck with Wisconsin plates, the kind of nondescript transportation that wouldn't draw attention in rural farming country. Bob's initial assessment identified several anomalies that raised his professional suspicions. The man's clothing was too new and too perfectly coordinated for someone engaged in agricultural work. His boots showed no signs of wear or exposure to farm environments. His hands lacked the calluses and stains that came from physical labor. Most significantly, his accent carried subtle inflections that suggested English was not his first language, despite his obvious efforts to disguise this fact. When the man entered the gas station's convenience store, Bob's surveillance instincts shifted into high alert. Instead of purchasing typical travel items like snacks, drinks, or basic automotive supplies, the stranger went directly to the map display and began examining detailed topographical maps of the region with unusual intensity. He studied road networks, elevation changes, and infrastructure details with the systematic attention of someone conducting reconnaissance rather than planning a casual trip. "Excuse me," the man said, approaching the counter with 3 different maps in his hands. "I'm trying to find the best routes through this area for my trucking company. We're looking at moving some large equipment, and I need to know about weight restrictions and clearance heights on these roads." Bob's training had taught him to recognize when someone was fishing for information under false pretenses. The man's questions were too specific and too focused on details that would be irrelevant to legitimate trucking operations. He was particularly interested in roads that provided access to Fort McCready, asking about traffic patterns, security checkpoints, and typical convoy schedules. "Are there regular military transports that use these highways?" the man asked, pointing to several routes on the map. "We want to avoid any potential delays or conflicts with government vehicles that might have priority." The question confirmed Bob's suspicions. Legitimate trucking companies would already have access to information about military transport schedules through proper commercial channels. Someone asking a gas station attendant about convoy routes was either remarkably unprepared for his supposed business, or was gathering intelligence for entirely different purposes. Bob maintained his casual demeanor while mentally cataloging every detail of the interaction. The man's accent became more pronounced when he was concentrating on the maps, suggesting origins in Eastern Europe, possibly Russia or one of the former Soviet republics. His questions followed a pattern that indicated military training in reconnaissance and intelligence gathering. Most importantly, his interest in Fort McCready was too focused and too detailed to be coincidental. "I don't really track military schedules," Bob replied, keeping his tone helpful but uninformed. "But I know there's usually more traffic on weekdays, especially Tuesday and Thursday mornings. You might want to check with the county road department if you need specific information about weight limits and stuff like that." The stranger purchased the maps and a cup of coffee, paying with cash and declining a receipt. Before leaving, he made one final attempt to gather information. "I noticed there's a military base somewhere around here. Do they have regular supply deliveries that might affect traffic flow?" Bob shrugged and gestured vaguely toward the north. "There's Fort McCready up that way, but I don't pay much attention to what they do. Just know they buy gas here sometimes when they're passing through." After the man left, Bob immediately began implementing surveillance protocols he hadn't used in over a decade. He photographed the stranger's license plate and ran it through databases he still had access to through carefully maintained contacts within federal law enforcement. He reviewed security camera footage to capture clear images of the individual's face and vehicle. Most importantly, he activated monitoring systems that would track any further unusual activity in the area. The license plate search revealed that the vehicle had been purchased with cash from a used car dealer in Chicago just 3 weeks earlier. The buyer had provided minimal identification and had used an address that turned out to be a vacant lot. The transaction showed classic indicators of an operational vehicle being acquired for temporary use by someone who didn't want their movements tracked through normal channels. Bob's analysis of security footage revealed additional concerning details. The stranger had conducted a systematic visual survey of the gas station property, noting camera positions, sight lines, and potential vulnerabilities with the practiced eye of someone trained in surveillance and counter-surveillance techniques. His movement suggested familiarity with operational security procedures used by intelligence services. Most alarming was what Bob observed in the reflection captured by one of his hidden cameras. While pretending to study the maps, the stranger had been using his cell phone to photograph specific route information and infrastructure details. The images were being taken with deliberate focus on information that would be valuable for planning interdiction operations against military convoys. Bob spent the next 72 hours implementing a comprehensive surveillance operation that drew on every skill he had learned during his CIA career. He established observation posts throughout the region, coordinated with his informal network of local assets, and began monitoring electronic communications for any activities connected to the suspicious visitor. The investigation revealed a pattern of activity that confirmed Bob's worst fears. The stranger was not acting alone. Over the previous 6 weeks, at least 4 different individuals had been conducting systematic reconnaissance throughout the region, each focusing on different aspects of the military installation's operations and security procedures. Martha Henderson reported unusual postal activity, including several packages addressed to temporary rental properties that had been paid for with cash by individuals providing minimal identification. Danny Kowalski had assisted with vehicle problems involving 3 different cars with out-of-state plates, all of which had been carrying occupants who showed unusual interest in local infrastructure and asked detailed questions about area geography. Most concerning was information from Janet Morrison about guests at the local motel. Over the past month, she had accommodated several visitors who paid in cash, provided minimal personal information, and exhibited behavior patterns that suggested they were conducting surveillance rather than engaging in legitimate business or tourism activities. Bob's electronic monitoring systems detected communications between these individuals using encryption methods and operational security procedures consistent with foreign intelligence services. The communications were brief and heavily coded, but frequency analysis and timing patterns suggested they were coordinating activities related to a specific operational objective. The picture that emerged from Bob's investigation was deeply troubling. A foreign intelligence team, almost certainly Russian based on linguistic analysis of intercepted communications, was conducting systematic preparation for an operation targeting Fort McCready's logistical operations. The level of detail and sophistication suggested they were planning either an interdiction of sensitive military cargo or a direct assault on convoy operations. Bob faced a critical decision. His unofficial status meant he had no direct channels for reporting this intelligence to appropriate authorities. His cover identity couldn't withstand the scrutiny that would result from claims about foreign espionage operations. But the threat was real and immediate, requiring intervention by federal agencies with the resources and authority to neutralize the espionage ring. The solution came through one of Bob's carefully maintained contacts within the federal law enforcement community. Agent Jennifer Walsh of the FBI's Counterintelligence Division had worked with Bob on several cases during his active CIA career. More importantly, she was one of the few people who knew his real identity and could be trusted to handle sensitive information without compromising his cover. Bob's call to Agent Walsh triggered an immediate federal response. Within 18 hours, a joint task force including FBI counterintelligence specialists, CIA operations officers, and military security personnel had established a coordination center in Milwaukee and begun implementing a comprehensive operation to identify and neutralize the espionage ring. The investigation that followed validated every aspect of Bob's analysis. The foreign intelligence team consisted of 7 operatives from the Russian Foreign Intelligence Service, operating under deep cover identities and using sophisticated support networks to conduct their surveillance and planning activities. Their objective was to intercept a specific military convoy scheduled to transport classified weapons technology from Fort McCready to a research facility in Colorado. The operation to neutralize the espionage ring required careful coordination to ensure that all members of the team were apprehended simultaneously, preventing any individuals from escaping to warn other Russian intelligence assets operating in the United States. Bob's detailed surveillance data and analysis proved crucial to the success of the operation. On November 3rd, federal agents conducted simultaneous arrests across 3 states, apprehending all 7 members of the Russian intelligence team, along with several support personnel who had been providing logistical assistance. The seized materials included detailed plans for the convoy interdiction, sophisticated surveillance equipment, and communications gear that revealed connections to other Russian intelligence operations throughout the Midwest. The success of the operation prevented what could have been a significant breach of American national security. The weapons technology that the Russians had been attempting to steal was classified at the highest levels and represented years of advanced research that could have provided foreign adversaries with critical military advantages. But Bob's contribution to national security went beyond preventing a single espionage operation. The intelligence network he had built around his gas station continued to function as an early warning system for unusual activity throughout the region. Federal agencies recognized the value of having an experienced intelligence professional positioned to monitor an area that might otherwise receive minimal attention from official security services. A formal arrangement was quietly established that provided Bob with secure communication channels to federal authorities while maintaining his cover identity and civilian status. His gas station became an unofficial observation post, monitoring regional activity and providing early detection of potential threats to military installations and critical infrastructure. The arrangement also included upgrades to Bob's surveillance and communication equipment, funded through classified programs that couldn't be traced to intelligence agencies. Carter's Gas and Go was transformed into a sophisticated listening post capable of monitoring electronic communications, tracking vehicle movements, and analyzing patterns of activity across a wide geographic area. Over the following years, Bob's network provided intelligence that contributed to the identification and neutralization of several additional foreign intelligence operations. His early warning systems detected reconnaissance activities targeting other military installations, identified illegal technology transfer operations, and provided critical information about foreign intelligence services' evolving tactics and capabilities. The local community remained completely unaware of the sophisticated intelligence operation being conducted from their neighborhood gas station. To them, Bob Carter was simply a reliable business owner who kept his station clean, his coffee fresh, and his prices fair. They appreciated his friendly demeanor and his willingness to help stranded motorists, never suspecting that their interactions were being carefully observed and analyzed for potential security implications. Bob's informal network of local assets continued to provide valuable information, though they never learned the true significance of their contributions to national security. Martha Henderson continued reporting unusual postal activity. Danny Kowalski provided information about suspicious vehicles, and Janet Morrison monitored unusual guests at the motel. Their reports contributed to a comprehensive picture of regional activity that helped federal agencies identify emerging threats before they could develop into serious security breaches. The success of Bob's operation also influenced broader counterintelligence strategies throughout the United States. Federal agencies recognized the value of having experienced intelligence professionals positioned in strategic locations where they could monitor for unusual activity, without the bureaucratic constraints and visibility associated with official government operations. Similar arrangements were quietly established in other regions where retired intelligence professionals were willing to maintain informal surveillance networks while pursuing civilian careers. These operations provided early warning capabilities that complemented official security measures and helped ensure that foreign intelligence services couldn't operate undetected in areas that might otherwise receive minimal attention from federal authorities. 10 years after the initial Russian espionage ring was neutralized, Bob's intelligence network had evolved into one of the most effective counterintelligence operations in the American Midwest. His gas station served as the center of a sophisticated surveillance system that monitored activity across multiple states and provided early detection of threats to military installations, critical infrastructure, and sensitive government operations. The operations success was measured not just in the foreign intelligence operations that were detected and neutralized, but in the broader deterrent effect it created. Foreign intelligence services operating in the United States became increasingly cautious about conducting operations in rural areas, knowing that sophisticated surveillance capabilities might be monitoring their activities from unexpected locations. Bob's personal satisfaction came from knowing that his expertise and experience continued to serve his country's security interests, even though his contributions could never be publicly acknowledged. He had successfully transitioned from active intelligence operations to a support role that was equally valuable but far less visible to potential adversaries. The gas station that started as a cover identity had become something more significant, a permanent intelligence asset that provided ongoing protection for American national security interests. Bob's daily routine of pumping gas, selling coffee, and making small talk with customers concealed one of the most effective counterintelligence operations in modern American history. Carter's Gas and Go remained a popular stop for local residents and travelers passing through Millfield. Customers continued to appreciate Bob's friendly service and helpful attitude, never realizing that their casual conversations and routine activities were contributing to a comprehensive intelligence picture that helped protect national security. The trace that Bob had left extended far beyond the specific operations he had conducted. His model of intelligence gathering and analysis influenced counterintelligence strategies throughout the federal government. Training programs for intelligence professionals began incorporating lessons learned from his innovative approach to surveillance and threat detection in civilian environments. Federal agencies recognized that traditional intelligence operations, with their bureaucratic structure and high visibility, weren't always the most effective approach to counterintelligence work. Bob's success demonstrated that experienced professionals operating with appropriate support and equipment could achieve remarkable results while maintaining complete operational security and civilian cover. The broader implications of Bob's work contributed to a fundamental shift in American counterintelligence strategy. Rather than relying exclusively on large, formal operations that were vulnerable to detection and interference by foreign intelligence services, agencies began developing networks of smaller, more discreet capabilities that could operate indefinitely without attracting attention. 20 years after Bob had first arrived in Millfield, his gas station continued to serve as an active intelligence asset, monitoring regional activity and providing early warning of potential threats to American security interests. The operation had become completely integrated into the local community, invisible to anyone who didn't know what to look for. Bob himself had aged into the role perfectly, becoming a respected member of the Millfield community while maintaining his cover identity and continuing his intelligence work. Local residents saw him as a successful small business owner who would contribute to the town's economic stability and social fabric. But beneath the surface of small-town normalcy, Bob Carter remained what it had always been: a highly skilled intelligence professional whose expertise and dedication continued to protect American national security interests. His gas station served as proof that the most effective intelligence operations were often the ones that remained completely invisible, conducted by professionals who understood that the best trace was the one that appeared to leave no trace at all. The stranger with the foreign accent who had stopped at Carter's Gas and Go on that October morning had no idea that his simple request for maps and information would trigger an intelligence operation that would continue protecting American interests for decades to come. His attempt to gather reconnaissance information had instead revealed the presence of one of the most sophisticated counterintelligence assets in the United States. Bob's legacy was written not in classified files or official commendations, but in the countless threats that never materialized because they were detected and neutralized before they could develop into serious security breaches. His trace was measured in the operations that didn't happen, the intelligence that wasn't stolen, and security that was maintained through vigilance that no one could see.